Hey guys, King Charmanders here. Today I bring you a video on the best critical element meta build. One build for all elements. So this video again features the best critical element meta build. And the critical element build can be used for all elements. This makes it so you don't have to invest in multiple elemental attack armor pieces. You're just starting out the game, or you've been progressively hardcore and you don't want to make 5 elements because that's 5 elemental attacks for fire, water, thunder, ice, and dragon. You can just use this one. And this is also the best build when you take drift smelting into consideration. So if you're going to drift smelt something that does not have a consistent whatchamacallit, if you want to drift smelt something that doesn't have conditional skills and you don't want to make 5 different drift smelt builds, well, you could just use this one, and the difference is very minimal when you compare it to elemental attack. I will also be putting a melee substitute build for those who did not participate in Monster Hunter Now Carnival 2024 paid ticket events. So if you've never done the research and you're still complaining, well, guess what? There's this alternate build that actually isn't that bad. First, we're going to start off with how critical element works. So before we show the builds, we need to know how critical element works, because you have people out there spreading misinformation before doing research, and then they're like, oh wait, I was wrong. Yes, because if you did a little bit of paying attention to detail, you would have noticed that per the description, critical element only applies to the weapon's elemental attack power. I got this right away. As soon as I read it, I was like, oh, okay, so just the weapons. In other words, adding anything else doesn't matter. So that means the higher the weapon grade, the more critical element damage you will do. And it also means that elemental attack will not stack with critical element because it does not come from the weapon's original attack. So you do not put critical element and elemental attack together, or drift smelt together. Nothing's gonna work. And unfortunately, bowguns don't really have a universal build, as they lack flexibility due to requiring reload speed and recoil down. They just take way too many slots, and unfortunately, some do have critical element as the meta, and some don't. So it's not interchangeable, and there's not one you can use overall that would really merit. Yeah, sadly, that's just the way bowguns are. And now we're going to jump right into the build, starting off with the best critical element melee build with the Carnival 2024 Mail. So this build features critical element combined with critical eye and critical boost. This build does the highest theoretical damage without any conditional skills. This build can be used for all elemental attacks: fire, water, ice, thunder, and dragon. And the 30% affinity boost from critical eye level 4 helps proc critical element. So when you put the data together, it also factors in critical element as well as crit. So some people are like, oh, it's conditional. No, it's not conditional. It's an average. So when you factor the data together, you put an average together, that's what it is. Sometimes you get really lucky and it procs all the time. It'll actually be higher than that theoretical average is. So yeah, it's not conditional. It's just, this is the chances. You put the damage together and bam, here's this number. If you want to use this build, you have to use the Silver Rathalos helmet at grade 8, the Carnival 2024 Mail at grade 8, the Azure Rathalos fan braces at grade 6, the Pink Rathian coil at grade 6, and the Silver Rathalos greaves at grade 8. Next up, we have the alternative critical element build melee with Rathian fan braces. And this build features critical element combined with critical eye and burst. So if you don't have the Carnival 2024 Mail, you're really mad about it not being available for you because it wasn't free. Well, this build does only a little less damage than a critical element build, and it's totally free. In other words, you didn't have to pay a paid ticket for it. And this build can be used for all elemental attacks: fire, water, ice, thunder, and of course dragon. And the 30% affinity boost from critical eye level 4 helps proc critical element. So you're going to still get that critical eye level 4, just a little bit of a different combination. And you still have lock on. To use this build, you need the Silver Rathalos helmet at grade 8, the Oda Garamir at grade 6, the Rathian fan braces at grade 6, the Pink Rathian coil at grade 6, and the Silver Rathalos greaves at grade 8. And last but not least for builds, we have the best critical element build for the bow. And this build features critical element combined with critical boost. And this build does the highest theoretical damage without any conditional skills, like latent power and fighting spirit. And this build can be used for all elemental attacks. Again, I keep saying it because it's fire, water, ice, thunder, and dragon. So for bows, yes, you can get away with it. That's because Focus level 5 is maxed out with this build thanks to Nightshade Paloon Mail and the Rajang coil. The focus flexibility being a lot better since the beginning of the game makes bow very viable for critical element. That's just the way it is, and bow historically has been one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful monster type, arguably, in all of Monster Hunter now. To use this build, you need the Silver Rathalos helmet at grade 8, the Nightshade Palumu mail at grade 8, the Azarathalos Vambraces at grade 6, the Rajang Coil at grade 8, and the Silver Rathalos Greaves at grade 8. Moving on, here's supporting data because, you know, rather than your opinions, you need data because data is factual and data will help you out a lot more than opinions. And here, we're going to start off with fire. So here's the critical element fire supporting data. And we're going to use Silver Rathalos weapons for this because they're the best fire weapons in the game. In each of these, I will use the best archetype currently in the game for that set element. And these are the best builds that don't have any conditional skills like Latent Power and Fighting Spirit. For melee, the best build beats out even Latent Power by 1 to 3%. And the alternative build is only 3% lower than the best one, 2.97% to be exact. So when you place Burst and the Rathian Vambraces with the Carnival 2024 mail, you only have a 3% difference. That's not a lot, at all. And for bows, the best build still stays close to those conditional skills. So if you look at it, it's only 3.27% less than the top conditional build, which has Latent Power level 2. For the next element, we have water for critical element, and here's the supporting data. So we're going to use Mizutsune weapons for this, because they are the best water weapons currently in the game. And these are the best builds, again, that do not have any conditional skills like Latent Power and Fighting Spirit. I'm going to say that for all the elements because conditional skills are things like you have to do X, Y, and Z to activate them. So yes. For melee, the best build barely loses to conditional builds by 1 to 2%. Water's pretty close because Mizutsune weapons do give you affinity, but it's really interesting just how close they are in comparison to the other ones with Fighting Spirit and Latent Power. And the alternative build is only 3% lower than the best one. Well, that's, when you round it up, it's 2.24 to be exact for the percentage. So it's even closer than fire. And for bows, the best build barely loses to water attack level 4, which is 3.65% to be exact. So yes, elemental attack will take over some of these elemental builds just because of the fact of not having enough crit to support it. But either way, if you don't have those elemental pieces built, guess what? 4% isn't a lot at all. So you could still use it and you will hardly or barely notice a difference at the end of your hunts. On to the next element, and we have the power of thunder. And here's the critical element supporting data for thunder. And we're going to use the ogre weapons because Rajang weapons have negative affinity, so they don't exactly work really well with critical element. These are the best builds again that do not have any conditional skills like Latent Power and Fighting Spirit. For melee, if we look up here, the best build barely loses to conditional builds by like 2 to 4%. The Fighting Spirit one on top is 4%, but that's not a lot. And the alternative build is only 3% lower than the best one, so which is also 3.86% to be exact if you round it up. So, not by much at all, and again, you won't notice too much of a difference, or anything at all. For bows, the best build barely loses to Thunder Attack level 5, which is 5.15% to be exact. Thunder's always been the most flexible one out of everything, but again, if you don't want to build Thunder Attack equipment and you want to save your materials, you're already going after critical element, you don't need to use Elemental Attack level 5. For the second to last element, we have Ice, and here's the critical element Ice supporting data. For this, we are going to use Kushala weapons. Yes, it's an Elder Dragon, but still, Kushala weapons are currently the best Ice archetype in the game right now. These are the best builds that don't have any conditional skills again, like Latent Power and Fighting Spirit. For melee, the best build barely loses to conditional builds by 3 to 5%. Again, 3 to 5, not a lot. And the alternative build is only 3% lower than the best one, which is 2.47% to be exact. So for all you pay-to-winners out there, it's really not that bad, and it's barely noticeable. For bows, the best build barely loses to Kushala Frostwind level 3, which is 4.23% to be exact. The thing is, Kushala Frostwind actually does stack with Ice Attack, and that's why it's the best Drift Smell build. Yes, you have the one above it, which is Burst level 2 and Critical Eye level 2, but overall, the Kushala Frostwind 3 is the best build for Drift Smelting because, again, Kushala Frostwind does stack with Ice Attack. So it's going to be Critical Element, unfortunately. But that's how Ice is. And last but not least, the element of Dragon, which here we have the critical element Dragon supporting data. We're going to use Near Gigante weapons because Near Gigante weapons are of Dragon element and they're the best Dragon element monster type in the game. Technically, Gold Rothian has something in there as well, but it's not an exclusive Dragon archetype. These are the best builds that don't have any conditional skills like Latent Power and Fighting Spirit. For melee, the best build barely loses to conditional builds by 3 to 5%. And the alternative build is only 6% lower than the best one. Well, that's when it's rounded up, which is 5.58% to be exact. For bows, the best build has a small loss to burst level 2 and critical eye level 2, which is 7.36% to be exact. It's small, it's not huge. This won't be a little noticeable, but for burst level 2 and critical eye level 2, it's just the way Dragon works. When the Dragon, there's not really replaceable skills, etc. for the Dragon element, or it's just not that flexible, so that's why we have burst level 2 and critical eye level 2 beating the critical element build. But again, if you don't want to even deal with that madness, just use the critical element build.
No, give me that. You have the little one.
I love the Avengers, and that's literally every person that does not have the Carnival 2024 mail. You think it's like the big one. It's not really the big one. You can have the little one, and the little one actually isn't going to do that bad. So hopefully this video helps you decide if you want to invest in critical element or not. And speaking of the little one, per the data, alternative build with Rothian Vambraces will barely lose to the Carnival 2024 mail. It is a completely viable build to use instead of the best critical element build. So if you don't know how to run data, you don't know the supporting data, well, here you go. You have something else that you can use, and it's factually not that bad in comparison to actually having the best one. So you can use that one. So yes, there is really no reason to say that the Carnival 2024 mail is pay to win, because I don't know, if you consider 2 to 5% pay to win and you haven't played like competitive games, yeah, it's not. 2 to 5% is pathetic, and in very, very small scenarios will that actually matter. Please do me a huge favor, like, subscribe, and comment for the YouTube algorithm. Good luck on your grinds, and I will see y'all on the next video.